As his father's namesake and the only male heir, Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr., fondly known as Bongbong, was destined for politics.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I am Bongbong Marcos. When I grow up, I want to be a politician.
Bongbong earned his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, Philosophy, and Economics in 1978 from Oxford University in England. He was only 23, still completing his MBA thesis at the Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania in the United States, when he was elected in absentia as vice governor of his home province, Ilocos Norte, in 1980. 3 years later, he became the governor. After the Edsa People Power Revolution in 1986, the Marcoses were forced to leave the country in exile. In 1991, Bongbong was the first among his family to return from exile, facing the possibility of arrest from the new regime. That same year, he took up where he left off and returned to public service. He was elected to Congress as representative for the 2nd District of Ilocos Norte. Among the measures he authored was the landmark law establishing the Philippine Youth Commission. He also initiated laws to upgrade the Filipino Overseas Workers Program, which was initiated by his father, the late President Ferdinand Marcos. In 1998, Bongbong made a comeback as governor of Ilocos Norte for 3 terms. Under his leadership, Ilocos Norte was transformed from a third-class to a first-class province. Agriculture and tourism boomed, and the province became a model for public health care, with all residents provided with health insurance. Bongbong returned to Congress in 2007 and was elected Deputy Minority Leader. In 2010, he was elected senator, ranking 7th with over 13 million votes. Senator Bongbong Marcos is chairman of the Committee of Public Works in the Senate. He led efforts for the relief and rehabilitation of areas and victims affected by Typhoon Yolanda, as well as investigations for government accountability in the application of relief and rehabilitation funds. He is also chairman of the Senate Committee on Local Government, hearing arguments related to the proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law. Senator Marcos suspended the BBL hearings to clarify provisions on the law following the Mamasapano Encounter.
The deliberations on the BBL are fundamental. And that is why if we are to write a version of the BBL that is going to succeed in actually bringing peace to Muslim Mindanao, then we have to know the facts behind the Maguindanao massacre. This peace process, we have not abandoned the hope that we will finally bring peace to Muslim Mindanao.
Senator Bongbong Marcos, good evening. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the Mamasapano clashes. Now, as chair of the Committee on Local Government Hearings on the Bangsamoro Basic Law, you decided to put a stop to it because you saw loopholes. What do you mean? What exactly are the points that you see that need to be refined?
Well, the reason my immediate reaction was to suspend hearings was to say because there are meant to be mechanisms. We are in the middle of a ceasefire. The peace agreement had been signed. There were mechanisms that were supposed to be used during the ceasefire for all these kinds of these incidents. And evidently, because there was a massacre, evidently the mechanisms didn't work. So I said we need to fix that first. Because if we just keep going as if this didn't happen, then this will happen again. Because clearly we have to fix it, make it more robust, make the system more effective. That way, we would be able to, from the lessons learned, from all those, whatever they may be, mistakes, failings, weaknesses, we had to put that into the law so that this wouldn't happen again. And beyond that, I mean, it was necessary that we find justice for the fallen 44 and for their families.
Yes. What is your sense? I mean, during the hearings, of course, many people are frustrated and it seems the full truth is not coming out. Do you think there's a cover-up here?
I don't know about cover-up. We're not being sold a story, which is probably how you would define a cover-up. What's happening is that it's very difficult to get any information. And you know, at the head of all of this is the commander-in-chief, is the president.
Yes.
And he hasn't been forthcoming with any kind of information that we need to one, find justice for our policemen, and two, to make sure it doesn't happen again, and put those systems in place.
Well, just looking at chain of command and accountability, definitely he is involved. And he says he knew about this. People are calling for his resignation. There's even talks of alleged coup plots to bring him down. Do you think that, given the situation, he is the commander-in-chief, he definitely has some accountability in this?
Well, this is the thing. We're not sure. Because again, we were told something, we hear another thing. There was a moment during one of the hearings where I asked all the commanders, and I said, who was the first person who told the president?
Yes.
And they all looked at each other and they couldn't answer. And I said, it's impossible. The president's surrounded by his military and police commanders in Zamboanga doing something else, and no one. There are people dying as we speak, and no one told him. And I think they were just trying to avoid answering that question, because the next question would have been, and what did he order you to do? What were his instructions to you? We have since been able to dig it up, and as you say, from the results of that line of questioning, it was the media actually who dug up the speech that he made and said, wherein he said, I heard about it early in the morning, and the whole day I was being reported to.
Right.
So we are still digging to see exactly how that process worked.
Yes.
Because this break in the chain of command may have caused confusion, and that confusion may have led to the lack of support that our policemen got from other branches of the military.
Right.
So it is actually one of the saddest things that I had to witness, where we had the policemen, the police commanders pointing fingers at the AFP, the armed forces, and the armed forces pointing fingers at the...
There is this rivalry and rift, really, between
Well,
the two.
there shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And there really wasn't before this.
Because you said your father knew everything about the
Well,
military. You said that
I was asked is that if in my father's time would he have known of such an operation.
Yeah.
And this was an extremely important, and it involved hundreds of men, something that major, of course. My father was a soldier, so he would have been very much in the loop.
Now, recently, just early this week, there has been an audio tape that's been going around of you supposedly talking to Presidential Peace Advisor Ging Deles. And people are saying that she's trying to whitewash and maybe, clear this investigation. What exactly did you talk about with Secretary
Well, what
Deles?
happened was that we were together at a hearing about the Bangsamoro Basic Law and its constitutional implications. And at the end of the hearing, she said, can I come and speak to you? Because that was the Monday. I keep saying after Mamasapano, it was still going.
Yeah.
They were still running after each other
11 hours.
while we were meeting.
So January 26th.
On January 26th, the Monday afterwards. And I was actually in a meeting, and I said, so just come up anytime. This is the office, and there were people walking in and out, and the doors were open. And I think we've established that it was recorded on a telephone. So it could have been just about anyone, which is, I suppose, our fault, because we weren't as careful as we could have been. And that's why I immediately apologized to the secretary, and I told her that, at the very least, you should be able to expect some discretion and privacy while you are in my office, and I wasn't able to provide that, and for that I apologize.
But was she trying to ask you for some concessions, to put a stop to the
Well,
investigation?
essentially what the meeting was about is what do we do? What do we do? How do we move forward from this? Because this is a big... And she was very insistent that we just carry on the process. And I was of the mind that, no, we cannot just carry on the process just like that. It's not as if nothing happened. And I was also asking her to set up a meeting with Chairman Iqbal, who is the chairman of the MILF panel, negotiating panel. And that's when I asked, I said, you have to ask him to come and, he has to come and see me. Not only is it necessary for us to find out the mistakes that were made or the weaknesses in the system, but also we must make accountable those who did the massacre.
Right.
And the point I was trying to make to the secretary is that you cannot have the peace without justice. And it will never be peaceful until it is very clear that who did what, and those that are implicated in the massacre should be made to pay for that, because that's outside the peace process. That's outside any agreement, and some more rather gruesome videos have come out since then.
Yes.
And what we see is tantamount is murder.
Some are calling this a war crime. And
I would say that they would be. They would be a war crime. Because I cannot think of any possible justification for the way our men were treated. So
now, going to what Chairman Iqbal said, you have asked for the MILF to return the gear and all the equipment they took from the SAF, and also for them to help in the search for terrorists. There's speculation and reports saying that Usman may still be in Maguindanao, and he is injured, but Chairman Iqbal says they have no links whatsoever. They did not coddle the terrorists. Do you believe him?
Well, it's still an open question. We're not, of course, it's not surprising that he would say that, but these international terrorists were in the camp of the MILF. They say it wasn't, that it was outside. It was in the BIFF part of the camp. But, then that raises the question. So what exactly is your relationship with the BIFF?
Yes.
Because the BIFF has not renounced violence. They continue to fight. They continue to fight against the government, against the state. So what is that relationship? Because if it's true, for example, that they are separate groups,
Yes.
then what is our peace agreement? If I have a peace agreement with the MILF and this other group continues to fight the government, there is no peace.
Yeah.
So maybe we have to rethink what we are doing and go and speak to these people and try and find an accommodation, or find a way to bring more people into the process to isolate those who are warmongers who continue to fight the government.
Right.
If they are together, then they have been negotiating in bad faith.
Yeah.
So we have to determine that.
Yeah.
And that is still a very open question. And we are starting to gather information as to what really is the relationship between the MILF and the BIFF. But, in the videos that we have been seeing, and they've been examining it very, very in great detail, and even the admission of the MILF, they were involved, and that many of their fighters were involved. And that last very terrible video where a wounded SAF trooper was just slowly, well, sort of, just mocked, and then eventually killed. Yeah. They've actually identified the person who was behind the gun as an MILF commander. What now? What do we do about that? Because you have to answer for that. They have to answer for that. So those are the issues that came to light, because many of the assumptions that we had made during the hearings, that the commissioning would have begun, that there were separate groups, that the MILF, it did not help that they made a statement in one of the public hearings saying, we are a revolutionary organization and remain so. And we were stunned by this because that means they were formed to fight the government as a secessionist movement. So what they were essentially saying is that we were formed to fight the government by violent means. We continue to be that organization. And so, is that really...
How can we make peace?
How that doesn't really... That sounds a little bit like a threat. And we cannot have a peace process under that kind of threat of violence. I may be called a critic of the peace process in the BBL, but if I am, it is only because I'm trying to find the weaknesses in it to put them right. And these are the kind of things that really get in the way of all that we're trying to do.
A lot of money came in. There's also a lot of question as to how this money was spent. And you led investigations on accountability of how relief and rehabilitations are spent. What were your findings?
These people are starving. It's not as if they're going to get rich by selling these relief goods. If they get too much, they'll keep it for the next day and the day after that. There were forces at work or influencing the relief effort that do not belong in a relief effort.
Senator, let's talk about some other issues and your thoughts on how the administration is handling it. For example, the EDCA, Enhanced Defense
Yes.
Agreement. No? So this is a expansion of the VFA. What do you think of this from the Visiting Forces Agreement? Is this really beneficial to the country?
I think a visiting forces agreement is beneficial. In principle, it is. I think it's a good thing. It helps in many ways. It helps our military, and the joint exercises are certainly useful because should the time come that they are needed, that coordination has already been established. So I think a visiting forces agreement is useful.
But the expansion to the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement,
Well,
apparently
you
this
know,
was more a
as-
gift to Obama, it seems.
That's what people began to suspect, because why was it rushed and why did you not ratify it by the Senate? Because the procedure is that all treaties must be ratified by the Senate, and the argument that the executive, that the president made is that it's not a treaty. In our determination, we had hearings on it, and it said it was. And the executive does not have the power to enter into treaties without ratification by the Senate. The other side of it is that, is this in fact basing? And that is not allowed. Our Constitution does not allow any foreign bases to be established on our soil. And so the technicality, if you want to call it, is that it is a revolving, rotational. But that's exactly when Subic and Clark were here. There were no American servicemen here permanently. They were always rotating. Even the base commanders, even the unit commanders were always rotating. So that's another argument, is this in fact a base, which makes it entirely unconstitutional. Right. And the argument's still ongoing.
Yeah. Well, with this setup, are you confident that the U.S. can really back the Philippines? For example, with the territorial rows with China, of course, with the Spratlys, do you think that the U.S. will really step in to help the Philippines?
Well, we know that they won't, because Obama said so.
Yeah.
When he came here, and he said if we get into difficulties, will the United States come in? And he immediately very categorically said no. Mm-hmm. That is not what the mutual defense agreement is.
So in a sense, it really is not so beneficial then, this EDCA
That's
at the end.
that's right. It would seem, if you read the EDCA, it seems to be very much skewed in the favor of the Americans, favor of the Americans, because they have one of the great points of argument when Subic and Clark were still here was we converted them from being American bases to Philippine bases, where visiting forces could stay, could establish their headquarters. So that now has it gone back to the old system, where the American flag is actually flying over Philippine soil. And there's, again, that argument is still there, but the access, there are areas within these bases that Filipino servicemen or any Filipino are not allowed into, which is contrary to the whole principle of it being a Philippine base. Then they talk about it's beneficial because there's going to be a lot of development. Well, everything that they bring, except for the actual buildings that they build, will be taken away again. So I don't see where the advantage is. Maybe we'll have some new buildings, but that'll be it. There will be shells. Again, the one thing that seems to make sense actually is that it's good because in terms of relief operations, and this was in the wake of Yolanda, that they're already in place, and that is something that is a point in favor for it.
They did help us a lot, and you were very active. I mean, you led relief efforts for Yolanda.
The international response was overwhelming.
Yeah.
We could not believe the people just showed up without being called. They just showed up, and how professional they were. They were telling us, this is what you need to be doing. You need to be talking about first relief. Then we need to remove the dead as much as possible. Then you have to think about water, cholera, diphtheria, all of these things. These are people who have done this for many, many years and in many, many places. Not only the equipment that they brought, the skills that they brought, the money.
Yeah.
that they were happy to spend.
And a lot of money came in. There's also a lot of question as to how this money was spent. And
Well-
you led investigations on accountability of how relief and rehabilitation resources were spent. What were your findings?
Well, my main concern was that there were so many pledges. And I thought, if we do not take advantage of them immediately, they might disappear because, people forget. And they say, oh, well, apparently you're not availing of our pledge, so perhaps you no longer need it. And we didn't want to get in that situation. I said, come on, we really have to get... And unfortunately, that my fear became true. The rehabilitation plan was approved just under a year after the storm. And the rehabilitation plan is necessary for the foreign or the international aid agencies to see where their money is going. And then if they agree with the plan, then that's when you start releasing the funds. And not only funds, but equipment. And you start sending people who, as I said, are very skilled at the rehab and reconstruction. So we missed many of those because we took so long. And that was a great pity. Then we found a lot of mismanagement as well in terms of the relief that came from the Philippines,
Local,
from the
yeah.
government. I remember being in Tacloban and bringing container loads of relief goods, and they were immediately taken away. And they said, we have to record everything, and we have to put it, so that we know exactly what we have. And okay, so we thought if that's the procedure, then that's fine. But then we went back to the warehouses, and I said, okay, can we now, since you've recorded everything, we are going to this place. We are going to need someone. Can we get it back, or can we get some so that we have something to give? And they wouldn't give it. Give it to us because we have to. All this bureaucratic red tape.
Yeah.
And I said, this is not the time because they have to be a list, etc., etc. And I said, relief goods, you don't take names and give tickets. You shove this stuff outside of the helicopter and these people are starving. It's not as if they're going to get rich by selling these relief goods. If they get too much, they'll keep it for the next day and the day after that. This is not the way to go about it. And there were just these kinds of strange procedures that really had no place in an emergency.
So you feel the administration did not handle this efficiently?
And not as well as they should have. It was shocking to me that I got there. We were bringing relief goods to places day 8 after Yolanda, day 9, day 10. We were the first people they saw. That were bringing relief goods, and we were amazed that nobody had gotten that far yet. We said, if we can do this, why can't the government? And this was just on a private basis. But the very fact that they were taking the relief goods away from private groups and individuals, and would have to course it through the system, really got in the way.
So this is the bureaucracy, but also there was also talk, of course, you are related to the Romualdeses of Tacloban, and they were saying the politics between the Aquino side. Did you feel that really come into play?
Yes. It is something, unfortunately, we had to deal with every day. And I tried to not really be too prominent in that, because my cousin, who is the mayor, and my other cousin, who is the congressman in the district where Tacloban is, they had to deal with the government. And I said, I don't want people to think that I'm trying to push my way into this whole process. But every time they would have meetings in the morning, regular meetings in the morning, I'd wait until they came back, and the frustration that they felt was amazing. So what we did was we went directly to the international aid agencies. And they said, we'll just do this ourselves. And we started organizing private people, just people we knew.
It's very frustrating because coming from you, who is in government, even you are seeing the frustrations that things cannot happen really. So you have to take it upon yourself to make things happen.
Put it this way, there were forces at work or influencing the relief effort that do not belong in a relief effort. that do not belong. And I'm talking about personal, political, all kinds of other things. I mean, people have been coming to their own conclusions from the information that came out of Yolanda. And I leave them to make their own conclusions. But there wasn't that singular idea of let's just help these poor people.
Yes.
Forget everything else. Just do this. Get the stuff out there. Get the assistance out there. There was a fundamental mistake in that they were saying, forget there was no rescue effort. It was all relief. And it was a huge frustration because when this group came in with dogs and they would go around looking for bodies. And when they found immediately so many bodies, and they came back and they said, there are these buildings and the dogs are going nuts because they were running around sniffing and they were going crazy. There are people there.
Yeah.
But the government had decided no rescue. We will just deal with the living. And that's why there was that video, that report, where the dead people who were laid out at the side of the road were never moved, were never collected.
You're saying there are no vehicles to transport them.
Well, but even when there were, the order from above was, don't worry about the dead, we'll just worry about the living.
Yeah.
But the thing is that there were many living, and because there was no rescue effort, that we unfortunately died because of that decision.
Yeah.
So it was hugely frustrating, I must admit. It was hugely frustrating, but there was no use jumping up and down, getting angry, and being critical left, right, and center. We just had to just get on with the job. And you just kept putting it in your mind. There are people out there who haven't eaten for days. There are people out there who are hurt that need medical attention. There are people out there that cannot find their family members. There are people out there who are living in a hovel with their dead.
Yeah.
And that's what you kept thinking about. And it was it was a huge disappointment to see that the instructions from the powers that be in government were not thinking in the same vein as we were. We're just throw everything we have at it.
Yeah.
Throw every asset that we have, all the airplanes, get all of the international agencies, get all the private individuals, all the groups, put them all together and just get them out there.
You had this term, you called it discarding Pinoy.
Filipinos are used to difficulty, are used to having a tough time, and yet we always manage. We always manage. We're very clever, we're very resourceful, and we do it with a smile.
Okay, Senator Marcos, let's talk about some of your landmark bills and resolutions. One of the things, in 2013, you authored Senate Bill 1186, which was the act to postpone the Sangguniang Kabataan elections. At the time, you saw a great need for reforms, and it's still happening today, because even this year, SK elections were postponed. What sort of reforms do you see are needed here?
Well, the problem was when the election was coming up. Suddenly we started hearing from local government and some of the members of Congress, of the House of Representatives, saying just abolish it. I said, because it's not been a good experience and it hasn't really worked, and it's only become another facet of the political nepotism. So we need to fix it, because it's in my view, it's extremely important that we have a strong youth movement and a strong youth voice in government for many reasons. So we said, okay, let's be open-minded. Let's not just force the thing through. Let's listen to what people are complaining about. Try and fix it. So we said, okay, let's postpone and give ourselves a year to work on it. And at the end of that year, we'll have the new system, and then hopefully we will have resolved those difficulties, those problems, those complaints, that people have been making. And so we did. We gave ourselves a year. We postponed it. But we finished in the Senate. They did not finish in the House of Representatives. So we got to the point where we said either we have an election or we don't. And if we don't have a new law, then we will have an election under the old system, which nobody wants. So we said, okay, we got a promise out of the congressmen to come up with their own version, which they did. And we said, okay, we'll postpone again, but a gentleman's agreement that we will finish ours and you finish yours, and by that time, before this session ends, which is March 20, we will have a new SK bill, Sangguniang Kabataan bill. So that's what's happened. And I think, although maybe there's still some fine-tuning required, I think the major issues have been addressed.
Now let's go back in time. When you were governor of Ilocos Norte, a lot happened there. You did so much for the province. It transformed into a first-class province from being a third-class province. Now you had this term, you called it discarding Pinoy. Ano yun? Ano yung discarding Pinoy?
You know, what are the great qualities of Filipinos, right? Filipinos are used to difficulty, are used to having a tough time, not enough money, not enough training, not enough, I think the American expression is a day late and a dollar short. Well, that's where basically we always find us. And yet we always manage. We always manage. We're very clever. We're very resourceful. And we do it with a smile. And I said, that's the idea, that Filipino quality, where we don't let these challenges to phase us. We just keep going, we're making jokes about it, and we just find a way. We find a way. And I think it was developed because we were colonized, and we were second-class citizens. And we had to find other ways. We couldn't go the regular route to be successful or to get things done. We had to find clever ways around the system.
Resourceful.
Yeah. Yes, and that's where that resourcefulness came in. And that has stood us in very good stead. Now our OFWs are using that kind of cultural skill to be successes abroad. And I think it's something that when you look at normal citizens, when they go about their daily work, go to their jobs, do the thing, they're all constantly applying it. And I said, so why do we have to take the model of other places when we have this brilliant one right here? And that's what discarding Pinoy is. Just be Pinoy about it. Don't try to be Swiss, or don't try to be American, or
Copycat, yeah.
Okay, we try and see if there are elements of that might work for us. But that's part of the resourcefulness, is that we just take what we can and use it, to get what we need done. And I think it's something that it's been that kind of informal way of working that sometimes people say, you should be more by the numbers. And I say, well, yeah, maybe that's true, but there are certain situations where a little creativeness goes a long way, and we're good at that.
And this is clearly evident in your tourism campaign, which your sister, Governor Amy Marcos, has continued. I mean,
Yes.
Ilocos Norte is known now for international festivals, of course, the sand dunes,
Yes.
Bawai.
Yeah, there was actually we were talking. I said, will we really do this tourism? Because then people will start coming, and then we're going to have to share this beautiful place with other people, which of course was just a joke. But so eventually, what I started was the international tourism. There was a period in the early part of the century where all the Chinese mainland tourists were in Ilocos. Gladly, that has since changed, and a lot are going to Manila and other places in the Philippines. But that was our first foray, because somehow at that time domestic tourism wasn't that big a deal. People weren't doing the ecotourism, that's so popular now.
Yeah.
It was very much because we have a casino. I said that we'll build the system around that. My sister, Governor Amy, has since changed that. And she has concentrated, of course the international tourism continues, but she has also built up the domestic tourism. And it's been quite successful, and it's done a lot of good for the province, because the upstream and downstream, for example, employment, skills transfer, all of these things. Just to provide food for all of this, you have to build up the food supply. And that is, which means you have to fix the agricultural sector, you have to the distribution systems. Even something as simple as what do they do at night? So we had to organize these cultural troops so that they would, show a little bit of the history. And even that, you wouldn't think. So now performers are coming, they're being trained. And so it's not just a means of earning a livelihood, but it's really promoting the Ilocano culture.
Yeah.
Which we from the north are extremely proud of. So
Of course, and very hardworking too. And
Yes.
some of the first migrants to other parts of the world.
I think the first ones, we just celebrated in 2006 the 100 years of the first boatload of Ilocanos that went to Hawaii. They went in 1906. And so that's how long we've been doing it. That's why.
And your father was very supportive also. He started a program for overseas for Filipino workers, which you continued.
It coincided because if you remember the early 70s, the oil crisis was in 73 when the oil prices the cartel increased it suddenly. So the oil producers, especially in the Middle East, suddenly had a great deal of money.
Yeah.
So they were building and building, and that was an opportunity that my father saw. So we sent many of our workers there, and we had a distinct advantage because we were well-trained and we spoke English, which was you would think it's a simple thing, but it was very important because whereas there were other countries were sending in workers, of course, it is harder to the common language would still have been English. That's become even more important now because of the internet. So that's what began that OFW, the diaspora of the.
Yeah, little did we know then that it would be the largest, contributor to the GDP of the Philippines.
Yes, it's what's really that's really what's funding the economy.
Yeah.
I think last year the number is around 23 billion dollars in remittances. That's a huge number.
Speaking, you just mentioned English, Senator. You have been lobbying for English to really be the principal language of instruction, while of course there are many who say it should be Tagalog, Filipino. Then you mentioned now English is the language of the internet. Why do you think English should really be the language of instruction here in the Philippines?
Because exactly, you just look at the experience of the OFWs. The reason that it's been so easy for them to get employed is that they speak good English. And even for tourism, for example, you can still get by. Maybe they don't speak Shakespearean English, but you can speak to anyone in the street and ask for directions. You can speak to anyone in the street and ask for assistance in English. So immediately that's a huge advantage. If you go to other countries, I've been to other countries, and it's just so difficult to get anything done or to get around if you don't speak the local language. Whereas in the Philippines, but we're losing it. Our English is getting less and less widespread. The English education is getting less and less widespread, and I think that's a pity. I think we're missing a chance here. I think it was about 5 years ago that the business done on the internet surpassed business that was done face-to-face. So more business is done on the internet than any other way.
Yes.
And the language of the internet is English. Well, for better or for worse, we like it or we don't, but that's the fact. So we cannot fall back behind. Look at the developing nations. Yeah. China has, as we speak, 10 million people studying the English language. In fact, we had an experience in Ilocos where we said we'd set up an English language school. So we did, and they were sending people. And then they said, that's too few. Where they were sending, I think, a few hundred every month. I said, no, we need more. So they just pirated all the instructors, brought them to China, and now they're there teaching the language.
Yeah.
So
even Koreans are coming.
And Koreans, that's why you can see that everybody else seems to have recognized this opportunity. Yeah. We may be missing it, and that's unfortunate. It's an opportunity that we can take full advantage of. We are now the biggest business processing.
Yes, we
Why?
overtook India.
Because we speak English.
Okay, Senator, let's talk about growing up in the Marcos family. So it seems you were destined to be in politics because of course, you are the namesake of your father. What was it like growing up with Ferdinand Marcos and Imelda Marcos?
Very busy. I mean, the people around us were always very busy. It was like, basically, it felt like living in an office. Because the work, like for example, even in our home, there were always meetings going on. It was always full of people. Or, if that wasn't the case, there was no one. Because my parents were somewhere else working, they were campaigning, they were somewhere in another part of the country. So it was either absolutely full of people, or
extremes,
or just completely quiet, where everyone was somewhere else doing what they were doing. But it was always, it was of course extremely political, and from the time my first memories of politics, it must have been 3 years old, and already we'd read in the newspaper about my dad, some good, some not so good, all the usual political cut and thrust, right? And so that's always been like the background music to our lives. It's always been that way. So of course you're a kid. You don't remark, oh, what a strange life. This is my life.
It was normal.
It was a bit of a surprise to find out that other kids their homes were not like that. But that was our normal. That was the ordinary thing.
Looking back at the lessons of EDSA, are there lessons that you learned or things that maybe your father did and didn't do? Would you have done them different?
It comes down really to individuals. People that we trusted, we shouldn't have.
Your desire to be part of politics really began at a young age because you were drawn to what your mother and father were doing.
I resisted politics with every fiber of my being when I was young, when I was a teenager, when I was a student. All my studies were not preparing me for politics because I was not going to go into politics. And my dad would say, maybe it's time for you to get involved. No, I don't want to be any part of that. I said, why not? I said, because you're there. You've done everything already. And everything I do will they'll compare me to you. I could see it. It was a hard life. Yeah. I could see the sacrifices my parents were making, my dad was making, how difficult it was. I mean, people see what comes out on TV and about the president's life. I saw that, and I also saw what went on behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. And it was not easy. It was not an easy life. And then this complete lack of privacy, this total, it was a big culture shock to me when I went to school abroad, and I was anonymous. Yeah. Yeah. And nobody knew who I was, nobody cared who I was, and so this is new. And that felt, this is okay. I kind of like this, just getting on with your life without having to
So you called it like a sort of schizophrenic life because you had the anonymity in the UK, yes. But back in the Philippines, it was the son of the president.
I know, it's a wonder I'm not crazier than I already am, having to deal with that. But that was the first part of my life, was spent, a lot of my energy was spent resisting entering politics. That's why, the people are a little surprised when I tell them that, because they say, oh, see, you ended up in politics, must have been a natural progression. I said, no, not at all. Circumstances intervened, and then, but that, my life's been that way, is that these things that you never thought would happen, happened. And here we are.
You were away for most of your student life. You were studying in the UK, and in 1972, when your father declared martial law, you were away. What did you feel then? What did it mean to you? What was happening here?
Well, of course, it was a very big event. Although my father, in private conversations, I'd heard him already say, we may have to do this, and telling us, the kids, explaining, first of all, why he was sending us away. He said, well, first, because you can get very good education, number one, but also because things are going to are becoming unstable and unsettled here in the Philippines. So that I don't have to worry about you, I'll send you abroad. So that was part of the thing. And he would explain that, oh, this is what's happening. At the time, essentially, we were fighting wars on two fronts. There was the secessionist movement in the south, and then there was in the countryside where there was the communist uprising. So those were the big forces, political forces that made him come to that decision. So we sort of knew that it may come, but nevertheless, when the ambassador, our ambassador, called and said, your father just declared martial law in the Philippines, just so that you know. It was, of course, still, he said, okay, the world has changed.
Yeah.
This huge thing has happened. And what I thought, and I think my sisters as well, was that what does it mean? What are we going to encounter when we get back home? Because it was September, that was just the beginning of our term. We would come back for Christmas. So what was it going to be like? And it was very different. Things had changed completely. So it wasn't a shock in the sense it was a surprise, but it was
definitely not very easy. And of course, in 1986, we're also coming to the anniversary of the People Power Revolution, Edsa 1. That was also a very difficult thing for kids to go through. What was it like for you?
Well, I was in my 20s already in 1986. So
you were already in politics.
I was already governor of
yeah.
Ilocos Norte at the time. My sisters already had families. I was the only one who still didn't have a family. But yes, it was completely a complete change.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, take it in your stride. And you thought you had taken it in your stride, but looking back, you hadn't. It was just too big an event and too such a huge change in everything. First of all, you didn't even live in the Philippines
Yeah,
anymore.
your family was exiled.
Suddenly, you were not in the Philippines; you were in Hawaii, which my mother correctly described as the most beautiful prison in the world, because it's a wonderful place. The people are lovely, but the circumstances, it wasn't exactly a holiday.
Right.
So all these difficulties were coming in. That some things that we never had to deal with before, because we were dealing now with the American government,
Yeah.
and they were doing everything to control us, keep us there, not to get involved. So it's all very yes, it was difficult. It was difficult.
And you were the first to return in 1992, braving, of course, the possibility of arrest.
Well, 91.
91, was it 91?
End of October 1991.
Yes. And then soon after you returned to politics. You wanted to return
I
soon
ran,
after.
in the next election, I ran for Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the time, because you were preparing for the return of your father's remains. You were the one arranging everything. So,
Well, on this end, yes.
Yeah, here.
Although the rest of the family, my mother arrived soon afterwards, and my sisters arrived also soon afterwards. So by the time we brought my dad's body back, we were all here, and we were, it's not as if I was the only one doing anything. We were all here, so we were able to put that together.
what would you say, looking back at the lessons of EDSA, are there lessons that you learned or things that maybe your father did and didn't do? Would you have done them different? Do you look at things that he did before that you would change or would continue?
I suppose some of it comes down really to individuals, because people that we trusted, we shouldn't have. There were many of those, and people that we counted on, and this includes the American government. We thought they were allies, and it turns out they were not. Many of the people who had gained huge advantages in the time of my father suddenly turned on us, and they said, oh, how's that? But I guess that's human nature, and now we know to expect that, and those are the lessons learned.
What is it like to be, we can't, of course, ignore the fact that there is a stigma attached to the Marcos name. And it was different then, but now it's a different time. What is it like now as a Marcos leading in the era today now, appealing to a different audience? Of course, there's the internet, technology. Many of the generations now don't even know history before. What is it like for you leading as a Marcos?
Well, I don't, it's just as if I continue. There was the 6 years where we were away, and we were in exile and not allowed to come home. That was like a blip where nothing happened for 6 years. And then we got back and we just carried on with our lives. Changed, the circumstances had changed, our lives, our positions had changed. But we just, recognizing that, we just got on with our lives. And I was always a little bit perplexed by people when I won the seat in the Senate. When they said, oh, the Marcoses are back. I said, we never went away. We've continuously been working the same way that we were working. And that's I guess, the instinct that we learned from my father. He would always remind us that we are very, very lucky. And everything that we have came from the people. So your life must be devoted to serving people.
So 2016 is coming up. Elections are coming up. Are you thinking of running for higher office?
Oh, I'm thinking about politics in general and seeing what the situation is.
Yeah.
And yes, there's been talk from these wonderful supporters of ours who are telling me that I should make a run for the presidency. Well, we'll see if that's possible.
There's been talk also of possibly maybe the Marcoses and Aquino sharing the stage, let's say, in promoting a candidate. Do you think you'll ever support or join forces and allies?
Why not? Why not? Governor Aimee, my sister, was in Congress with our president for 9 years, both together in the minority. So they were working together always. There is an Aquino in the Senate now, and I find I work together with him very easily. There's really none of that Aquino Marcos business. I think that's more for other people to speculate on. It's not when there's work, that all that stuff, at least on my side, all that stuff disappears, and we just have to get on with
So you think the Aquino Marcos feud is non-existent today? I mean, back in the day, maybe in the 70s, of course, it was very strong between Ninoy Aquino and Ferdinand Marcos.
Yes, and both of them are gone now.
Yeah.
They were opposing each other every step of the way in the Senate and when my father became president. But we don't have that kind of history with their children, and I don't think they have that kind of history with us. So yes, I hope we've taken a step forward away from that kind of attitude and just again, get on with the job at hand.
Well, let's talk about what you do to unwind. I mean, it takes over your life, politics, but you need to spend time with the family. You have 3 sons. So you once said that the Marcoses cannot create daughters.
We don't know how.
All the grandchildren are men or boys.
We don't know how to make girls.
How to make daughters.
It's funny when there's a girl comes into the, it says, oh, it's a girl. What do they do? We don't know what to do with them.
What is that?
What do they do? What do we feed them? What do we do? But it just happened. I don't know why.
Yeah.
My mother has 8 grandchildren, and they're all boys. Which is rather fun, actually. It's great fun. Of course, it'd be nice to have a girl they're much more affectionate.
You have the strong sisters and mother for that. And your wife.
Yes, we have. I'm surrounded by very strong women.
Yeah.
But I think we enjoy having the boys and the.
So they're also now in school in the UK. When they're back, you try to spend time with them.
Yeah, my guys, that's how because there are 8 guys, so my guys are the only ones left in school. Because I married last of us
The 3
siblings. So I have 2 boys in university, and my youngest is in his last year before university. So, yeah, moving on.
So you seem to bond with them. You're very good. You're a musician. You play the saxophone and the flute.
Well,
you were in a band in the UK.
I don't really practice anymore. Sometimes I'll pick it up and play badly. But in school I got very involved in music.
And you're a good singer.
In fact, I nearly studied music in university. But my father was shocked. He said, "No, you can't stay. You won't make any money." He was right. Our house was always filled with music when growing up, and that's because of my mother. She always wanted to have music. She was always exposing us to the arts,
Yes.
to all that side of life, and we did pick it up.
You once said that musical training makes you a better decision maker and hence a better politician.
Yes.
Also.
Music is, it has its own, music has its own logic. It's not mathematical logic, but it has its own. And to be a musician, you must be creative. To be a good politician, you also have to be creative. And I hate that expression, but to think out of the box, okay, it's so overused. But to think differently, lateral thinking, that's a better expression. Not linear, but to be able to do something that others have not done before, and that's essentially what jazz is. You ad-lib, you create something on the run while you're there. And many times in politics, it's the same situation. You're thinking about other things, but you're still thinking on your feet. And you have to make decisions very quickly. So I really believe that. And I think that it helps your mind work better in more dimensions than just a single dimension, because you're always looking for something new. And that helps your thinking in the work that I do.
That's a good metaphor. Well, Senator Bongbong Marcos, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for being on the show.